Uh, welcome to
No, the video. Well,
yeah,
maybe we'll see.
welcome to the Authentic
There you are.
Voice. Oh, if I'm up here, welcome to the Authentic Voice. I believe this is going to be episode number 6. So I'm here with Sean McGuire, a friend of mine that I met at the Core Shaman workshop in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, back in July of 2019. And we've been chatting a little bit here, and we're kind of jumping into the middle of a conversation. But just really quick, do you want to give us just a real quick, brief history of your background, Sean, and what led you into
A
this?
quick.
What led you into discovering your following your spirit and kind of following the path that you're on now?
Oh well, we started with a quick pre-call that got juicy real quick, and so really because we were talking about fundamentalism and Christianity, etc. But I've always had an eager spirit, really looking for truth, and so just always been curious. That's just been it's just who I am, and so I don't know about a quick, but just kind of just always look. I don't know. It's a long story, John.
Well,
long story,
so
but
I'll share some of the little bit that I know. So quick bio on Sean. You've been a successful real estate agent. Had your own real estate business. You've been a
yeah, best in
restaurateur.
the world, top 10% in the world.
Wow, you've also been a restaurateur. You've run restaurants, and you've been
Yeah, award winning as well.
yeah. So you've been highly successful in your lifetime, and somewhere in the last several years, you've decided to follow a different path, or to
Well, what's interesting, no, I think that is a good segue, really, because there's always been an eager for a spiritual path, but
mm-hmm,
there's never been an opening, and so it seems like every door that I went to was slammed in my face.
mm,
So there was never an opportunity to grow spiritually. I believe that I am a spiritual teacher and healer, and so and yet when I was younger, there was just no opening for me to explore that with at least with the spiritual tools that I have been given.
right,
And so it's not until once I got sober 17 years ago, and it really opened up a door that said I can create my own understanding of spirit, and that
mm,
blew my mind. It was like, whoa, well, okay, if I can create my own, then what does that look like? And I don't have to follow any guidelines. And
mm,
so it was then the curiosity of looking outside of the confines of organized spirituality um, began to take form in me. And so, in the meantime, that I was trekking down this road of success in the world as it's defined, and just kind of was very successful at everything that I did. And then come full circle, and over the last 17 years, I've had so many spiritual teachings that have resonated deeply that have helped me to quiet my mind to listen to the whisper of my spirit,
mm,
following spirit.
mm-hmm. And it's interesting. I've been on a similar spiritual path my entire life. I felt like I was heavily steeped, and we talked about this earlier, in charismatic Christian fundamentalism was sort of my upbringing. And to some certain extent, I'll always be my upbringing, right? I can't get rid of it. So I've been on a journey to, I've pushed back against that for many years, kind of really gone away from it, but then decided to re-embrace it in a new light. And that's been kind of my journey. but this also includes, we met at a core shamanism conference where we learned about the Foundation for Shamanic Studies, where we learned about some of the core concepts of shamanic journeying. And the thing that really struck me about meeting you there, meeting the other people there, was that it was probably some of the deepest connection and fellowship that I've experienced in the past several years. It was very, and I was scared because of my upbringing. I was scared to like plunge into something that's so outside of my, my normal. But in reality, I've been on the fringes of spirituality for my whole life. I haven't attended a organized religion, service in, my goodness, over 5 years. I think it's been a while. And been kind of exploring what you're talking about, just listening, quieting the mind and listening to my own spirit and following that and seeing where that leads. So it's interesting that both, that led us to the same conference, and that's where we met. And I felt just very welcome, it very much reminded me of a charismatic, like, Holy Spirit meeting, having the call, the singing the soul song and dancing and the stuff that we did at the beginning of the ceremony very much reminded me of that. It had a feel that was very familiar to me, that felt home in a way. And I thought that was very interesting.
Well, that's what's so sad about let's just say fundamental Christian. We were both raised in fundamental Christian environment. Is that there is deep connection to spirit in that environment. There's no question about it. I mean, I remember being lost in the spirit in worship, and really, I think had I not been pushed out, I would have explored that even more. It would have resonated as truth, because what I've learned is there's 1,000 ways to truth, and it was they that didn't want me, and so I had to go about finding another way to connect with spirit, and so I think I know what I felt in that shamanism class was a remembering. So it's a remembering about what happened in the fundamental church. It's a remembering what happened in the wilderness when I did all the training out in Colorado and New Mexico. It's a remembering what happens in a Zumba class when people get together and all doing the same thing with the same intention.
Yes.
That's just the human spirit when it gets together in it. What's the Bible say? When two or more are gathered, there I is.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I've experienced that on, a few occasions throughout my life. And one of the pronounced ones that helped bring me outside of the box was having the experience we were at a Bannock. It was a Bannock, I think it was the Bannock tribe in Idaho when I was stationed up there at Mountain Home Air Force Base, was doing a peace dance for our military base. And they came in full native garb and did a peace ceremony and a peace dance. And while they were doing that peace dance, I felt just the most beautiful, what I would have called in my more, in my earlier days, I would have called it the presence of the Holy Spirit or something to that effect, right? I felt that while they were dancing this native peace dance, and that helped me come outside of my box, because these were not Christians. This was not in a church environment, but yet here we are out in the wide world, and like that same spirit of peace, that same spirit of love, of acceptance, can descend on us at any time when we're in that, when we, it's almost like when we put down our ideas and our ideals, that's when, you can connect to spirit, and it's a very healing work. And I think that that's really interesting that you mentioned that, because it's a remembering, and it doesn't have to take place in one environment. And I think that's our problem as human beings, is that we want to capture that, and then we want to put it in a box, and then say like, okay, there's a 1, 2, 3 step process to getting this result. And in reality, that's just not the way that it works.
I hate 1, 2, 3. I really wish there was a 1, 2, 3. Like my 1, 2, 3, my authentic 1, 2, 3 likely is not your authentic 1, 2, 3.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you see, in McGuireLife.com, which is my new website and the business that I'm starting as a shamanic practitioner and mentor, is really just trying to help people to understand that your 1, 2, 3 is okay, and I don't really have the 1, 2, 3 for you, but I've got a lot of tools because I've had the opportunity to explore so many different ways of connecting to spirit that you might not have considered that might resonate with you if you're stuck or whatever. And so, but if you see anybody, a life coach or a spiritual teacher or whatever that big dude's name that sits on a stage, with a coliseum full of people, that says, if you follow these 9 steps, then you're going to find happiness, or whatever. I've got a guy across the hall here at my office in Atlanta, and he's a marketing guy, and I sat down with him. He's gracious enough to give me a couple hours of his time, and he's like, "So in marketing, we need an outcome, a transformational outcome. So we need to say, if you do this, then you will get this,
Yeah.
and we need to tap into people's health, wealth, or relationships. Those 3 things. And so I feel like we're all being tricked, right? So it's if you just do this, it's like we know that you're concerned about your health, wealth, and relationships, and we know that you want a transformational outcome because you're hurting and you're sad and you're lonely and you want connection and you want peace. And so therefore, we, the Gap, uh, Prada, whatever,
Right.
we're all going to exploit. We're going to exploit that, right? We're going to
Mm-hmm.
exploit that to the best we can so that you show up with your money. And so anyway, so after that meeting with him, I thought that's not me. You're going to show up broken, or you're going to show up motivated, or you're going to show up willing, and we're going to work on this together. And we're going
Mm.
to find your 1, 2, 3, which is your authentic 1, 2, 3, not mine.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I like that. I think that's the biggest thing that's missing in our kind of post, I would say a postmodern, our postmodern, rationalistic worldview. We've been overly secularized. There's a lot of people spiritually searching because they've left traditional religions, and the problem is that consumer spirituality has really taken advantage of a lot of people, and I think people feel really burned by that too. And it's like, so
Mm-hmm.
the missing ingredient is deep
Where do they
authenticity.
go?
Yeah, exactly. It's authenticity, I think, is the deep thing that's missing, is having that authentic relationship and realizing one on one that's like, I have that. I feel like this is why we met. I feel like this is why the universe brought us together, is because I have the same kind of calling to be a spiritual teacher. And that's why I'm going to school to be a spiritual director. Um, and kind of going that path. I really enjoy the shamanic side as well. I'm going to incorporate shamanic elements into my practice because I really, the meditation, the discipline, the stalking, the self-stalking, which maybe we can talk about a little later. These are all practices that
Mm.
they help me to inform my spirituality better. And I still consider myself, a follower of Christ. I consider myself a Christian in that sense, that I do follow Jesus. I don't really like church very much, and I never did. But I can still consider myself a follower of Christ because I think he was a shaman. He was a big shaman. As far as things go.
Sure.
Yeah. So, in a sense, I'm reintegrating with some of my roots, taking the good, and then also deciding to uh, discard the bad, take the good, and move forward. And it's been
Well, I think that's really what a spiritual journey, at least for me, has been all about. What resonates,
yeah,
and I can feel it here in my heart and in my belly. What really resonates is true, and hold on to that, and then what doesn't,
yeah,
and let that go, and do both without judgment. It's like this is the truth. This is the truth for me. If you come into my office, you'll see tarot cards and healing crystal bowls and native flutes and uh, all different types of modalities, and none of which are my truth. They're all a piece of what the spirit of Sean McGuire has assembled to navigate this world in truth the best he can, the best I can.
And that is a highly personal thing, and I think that's something that everybody is kind of searching, trying to build. I think what you have to do is you have to build your own connection, to yourself, and I think that is the divine as well. I think that's building your own connection to the divine, and people don't know how to do that. People need help.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you said authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
Authentic connection. So we can all build a connection. I can sit in a church and have the pastor tell me something, and I can say that is the truth, simply because that's what a spiritual leader told me. But does that resonate in my spirit as truth, or is it just truth because it's something that someone told me? So there's a big difference between hearing something and saying that's my truth, and really digesting it and saying, that's my truth. That's who I am as a man. And when I lay my head down on the pillow at night, I know that that is a piece of me.
One of the things that I thought was most interesting when we met, and we talked over that weekend, was that your wilderness immersion experiences that you did through, was it the School of Lost Borders?
Yeah, School of Lost Borders changed my whole life. I mean, as is this shamanism, which is really what I think what I've discovered in doing the shamanism courses is it's just the same. It's really the same thing, affirming that which I've already learned. I think you experience the same thing around even your Christianity. It's like, okay, this is showing up in the same way, just packaged in a different way. But School of Lost Borders, I'm a certified life coach, and I had studied for a couple of years with the Coaches Training Institute. And I was like, okay, I've done this, and now what? And I was coaching executives nationwide. They were having transformational change based upon their curriculum that I was taught, and I was happy for them, but yet it felt kind of flat. And so I was like, well, now what am I going to do? So there was a $10,000 leadership program that I signed up for, and I did it because that was the only thing I knew that was left to do with that work. But I didn't feel like that was what I was supposed to do. So long story short is I called the director of the program and I told him just that. And he said, doesn't sound like you're supposed to do this work. I'm going to give you your money back. Check out this website. And it was for the School of Lost Borders. And they do what's called a vision fast, which is similar to a vision quest, but in honor of the native people whose term vision quest is theirs. They call it vision fast, and it's a fasting in the wilderness for 5 days with no tent, no food, just water, 100 feet of rope and a tarp, all by yourself for 5 days.
Wow.
And listen, I like fancy stuff. I live in the penthouse on the ocean at the time. I like to eat. But when I went to the website, tears started streaming down my face, and I knew that's what I was supposed to do, and that was the next step. And so that led to 3 or 4 years of training with the coaches with School of Lost Borders.
Wow. See, that's cool. I really like that the fasting discipline is something that is kind of hip right now as far as a health thing to do. But I think a lot, like, people do intermittent fasting for health purposes, but the specific spiritual side of it is something that I think isn't as explored. And that's, interestingly enough, I did a 4.5 day fast, almost 5 days. After 4.5 days, I was still around people and everybody was eating, and it was really hard. I wasn't out by myself. So I made it 4.5 days on a nothing but water and herbal tea fast. But it was that time period, I think it was around day 3 in the middle of the night, when I really got a visitation and inspiration, of the divine. And that's what led me to the shaman course where we met. And that's what led me to going to the spiritual director program at George Fox University, where I'm going now. Was that that concerted time of fasting and listening, which I would love to have done it out in the wilderness. I didn't have the opportunity because I still had family stuff going on. But that's on my list to do, is go out in the woods, spend at least a week and do something similar, because I do believe it's in that place of waiting and listening where you can really get guidance for the next step. And I just think that's really cool that that's also, what you did in the training that you did. Because that's that's intense. That's intense to go out and do that.
Yeah, well, it's all everything's based on intention. I looked after the second shaman workshop that I did. I just did another one in Asheville a couple weekends ago. I was thinking about this word intention. What does it mean? So I looked it up in the Webster's dictionary, and in addition to whatever our mind is thinking, it's also a medical term. Did you know that?
No.
And when you have a wound, an open wound, intention means that the granular structure of the wound is attaching to the skin on the outside, and that's how wounds heal, is with intention. And I don't know, it was like, my mind just flew. So I said to my husband, because he's in the medical field, do you know this? And he had never heard of it either. I find that sometimes, often medical terms tie into spiritual terms like that. But when I fasted in the wilderness, it's all about intention. And so why am I there? What healing am I trying to get? Why do I want to sit in the wilderness by myself for 5 days and not eat? Is it just to do that? No, it's an intent. So I was a great human doing. I was top 10% internationally for real estate, and I list all the things that I've done. And I was a great human doing, and I took that life coaching business and I built it to a 6-figure company, coaching executives nationwide. And there I was in the doing again. And I wanted to be in this place of being. So I was a great human doing. How can I be a good human being? And I didn't know how to do that. So I wrote a letter of intention and sent it to them, and that was my intention. And that's why I went and sat in the wilderness. And it's fascinating. First, you sit for 4 or 5 days in circle, and everyone had brought their own intention while they were there. And then they give self-generated ceremonies, suggestions of what the directions mean, what the medicine wheel is, based off your intention, what you might consider doing, what might you want to bury, what might you want to burn, what might you want to, what talk about the death lodge, how you sat in a death lodge, all kinds of just self-generated ceremony that you could do while you were out on the land. And so it was great, just from relationship issues taking it out of the land to my work, human doing, like these insects out there were crazy. They're like, just flying around. It was like, it was so clear that that's who I was.
Yeah.
I was this great human doing, just kind of buzzing from place to place, but I really had no intention and no deep being. So anyway, it was mind blowing, and what a privilege to be able to do that. You come back to the circle, and then you talk about what happened over the 4 days as you watch the sun trek across the sky. What ceremony happened, and then the leaders mirror back the experience to you. So subsequently, I trained on how to be a leader and to do that, and to sit with people and to guide them across the threshold onto that rite of passage. But what most struck me after I left was this circle, and I didn't know what this circle and sitting down. I've never felt so heard. I've never felt so seen. And no one ever really talked about the circle. What was that? I called it a love circle. And I think the first time I felt anything close to that was when I first got sober 17 years ago. Really, when I said, "Hi, my name is Sean. I'm an alcoholic," and everyone was listening and no one was saying anything, I felt so heard. This was like next level. It was like, wow. And so what is that? So I called the leader and said, "What is this love circle?" And she said, that's called counsel. Oh, tell me more about that. So they give me, sends me this website that has the textbook, and I wept through the entire textbook, and just wept. And I got through it in 2 days, and I'm like, now what? Like, I want more. And then another 2 years of learning how to be a carrier of counsel and flying to California, back and forth to California, counsel 1, counsel 2, counsel 3, counsel 4, nature of counsel, and really sitting in this deep place of listening authentically, with my heart and spirit, and recognizing the power that is when the human spirit is heard. Not when the power isn't me listening to you, but the power is you know that you've been heard.
Mm.
The spirit of you knows that you've been heard. And yeah, so anyway, then, if I may, we just kind of go to the then a creative following spirit.com. And I thought, why should anyone have to go all the way out to the West Coast to learn this work? I want them to learn to be able to stay here on the East Coast. And when I did that, it's a beautiful website, still up and going, but no one ever went to it. And those that did, like, whoa, this shit is so woo-woo. Like, this is way out here, And so, yeah, so it really was a regurgitation of the work that I had learned out West, and it really wasn't the authentic, my interpretation, which is really what shamanism is. Shamanism is getting the teachings and learning the teachings, whether it be Christian teachings or otherwise, letting your spirit hear that authentically, and then regurgitating it back into the world as John's interpretation of the teaching that he received. And that, my friend, is shamanism. That is John the shaman. And yeah, and so this is what I'm doing this time. So I've just left the real estate world again after selling $45 million worth last year, and I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to step into the world and regurgitate all these teachings in an authentic way as my spirit has interpreted it.
Wow, that really speaks to me a lot. I really love that definition of shamanism, and that's also been my biggest struggle as well. Is I find myself regurgitating things out in a haphazard way because I want to share, but then it's not the deepest, authentic part of it's not resonating. It's just kind of like, I need to say something, so I put it out there. So I'm in that process of learning, integrating, healing, and also wanting to share. And that's part of this podcast that we're doing right now, is the sharing side of it. But the authenticity is what I want to maintain throughout all of it. And I feel like what you touched on, what you were just talking about, is what's missing. It's what's missing in society. It's what's missing in organized religion. It's what's missing in contemporary spirituality, where it's all about yourself. It's all about get rich, be happy, and self-image. It's very egoistic, being very egotistical. The missing part is the community and being heard, and be the counsel. What you were saying about counsel. How often do we feel like we are deeply heard? Very rarely,
I mean,
unfortunately.
Chills all over, chills everywhere.
Yeah.
Just chills, because we're not. We're always planning on what we're going to say next. We're not really listening.
And that's the crux of it, I think, is trying to maintain that authenticity, and not saying anything. This is my hardest thing, is shutting up when I don't have anything authentic to say. And that's one of my learning curves. Is I've always been the person who wants to tell everybody how it is and feel like I have it all figured out. And the reality is that I don't have it figured out. I'm struggling right along with everybody else. But we can.
With all my learnings, I'm still human, and that's the beauty of the council circle is black, white, gay, straight, fat, tall, skinny, short, whatever, however people show up, man, woman, transgender, it doesn't matter. When we get the talking piece in our hand, or they get the talking piece we put aside our stuff and we just authentically listen to them, we hear us, we hear our own story.
Mm.
We realize that we're not the only ones struggling and suffering, or we're not the only ones celebrating. I think it's, I think oftentimes, at least for me, I've got this picture in my bathroom that's that says, "Why so serious?" Because I just am always thinking about. It's just a reminder. Why are you so serious all the time? Because there's such joy. There's just such joy in spirit as well, and you don't have to be broken to come to the
Yeah.
spirit. Right?
Yeah, definitely. That's
Yeah.
one of my struggles too, is the being overly serious, needing to laugh at myself, um, and needing to cut up and realize that like life is hard, life's tough, but it's also doesn't need to be that serious. You need to be able to laugh at yourself and make fun of yourself as well, because we're all struggling, we're all hurting, but it's all like comically, there's something deeply comic about our struggles, especially when we're well fed and we're well rested and we're loved and we feel good. And then we look at like the other day when we were snapping and chewing someone's head off, and we're kind of like, what was my problem? I mean, geez Louise. And it's kind of comical in a sense, because we're like just these very funny creatures who are learning how to deal with
Very funny
themselves.
creatures, and really, and a very fragile body, and a very fragile. It's just like, I guess I just turned 50, so I have a new appreciation for being old. And I went in the other day for a very simple surgery on my finger. It would have been the first surgery I ever had. And long story short is, my heart went into wide complex tachycardia and started beating over 220 beats a minute. I have never seen fear in the anesthesiologist or nurse's face about my health like that before. They thought I was going to die.
Yikes.
And this was just a couple of weeks ago. And I ended up 7 hours in the ER, stress tests and all of that. But I say all that to say, it really brought me to this, for the first time ever, I think, to this place of gratitude for the moment. I've got tattoos all over my body and across my chest to remind me, like, this moment is my life. And in my mind, I know that, like, this moment is my life. This is the opportunity that I have. I shouldn't be snapping at you or ripping your head off, because this is a beautiful time that we have together. To your point earlier, but I have this magnet that says, "Stop, smile, breathe. Life is beautiful." And again, intellectually I had it, but when that happened on the table that day, it was like I was weeping looking at this "Stop, smile, breathe. Life is beautiful" magnet in this, wow, it really is. Like, I had my critter on my lap. I could see the back of his ears, and I was wondering what if I could never see that again. And but even that knowing, being so close to that knowing, and having the gratitude to be able to feel that, is fleeting. And in the car ride here, I was like, "Dude, get going! What the heck? Get going! Like, hurry! Get out of my way!" It's like, what happened to "Stop, smile, breathe? Life is beautiful." And
Mm-hmm.
that's forever fleeting, and it's bringing myself back to this gratitude place.
Yeah, that's tough. And I'm in the same boat where I'm constantly trying to, I'm finally prioritizing spiritual disciplines in my life, which include, um, introspection, solitude, silence, meditation, centering. And I am amazed at how hard it is to do these things and how much I feel like I'm failing more than succeeding. But it's not about that. It's about the intentionality of spend that 20 minutes in quiet every day and listen and let your mind unwind and come to that place of calm and listen to the deepest part. Don't, and it takes days, weeks, months sometimes of your brain, your frontal lobe that's just machinating to quiet itself, to process, and then sink from head down into heart and into spirit. And I feel like that's been my struggle. and trying to share those tools with others as well. Is like, if we did that, if we were more intentional in our individual relationships, then we would have, you know, a lot more peace. We'd have a lot more peace in our world, if we share these kinds of tools. And that was the ethos of shamanism too, was like, I can't remember what the mission statement was, but it was beautiful. It was, you know, something about sharing healing and light in the world, something like that. But it was really beautiful, that idea of, you know.
Well,
Go ahead.
go ahead, brother.
Oh, I was just going to say, do you remember
Oh,
it?
I don't remember it, but I just, you know, when we say, if we do this, then we will have. If we have this intention, then we will have better relationships. If I can tell you that if I sat for 20 minutes in silence every day, I think my head would explode. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's not what, it's not, I've tried it. You know, whatever, because they say that's what I should do. And
Mm-hmm.
yet it's not. So when I get to my little cabin in the woods and I'm sitting out on the porch, I'm listening to nature, and but I'm not going into this meditative state per se. I'm sitting outside in the dark, just listening to all the nature that's around me, um, and so I guess the thing is it's different for everyone. What I can't intentionally. I have tried to intentionally go inside and sit for 20 minutes so that it goes from here down into my heart, but that's not what works for me. What
Mm-hmm.
works for me is playing my flute. What works for me is getting out on the trail. What works for me is listening to nature. Those things are what works to get me out of here and into here.
Right. Right.
Can I tell you a quick story about that? You know, when how I got to the shaman course, my aunt died, and I got this what I called a shaman in a box. She died. I didn't know she had all these spiritual things, and she's not really my real aunt, but my family disowned me because I was gay. So I had to kind of pick my own family. So I had a mom that I call mom. Her sister died, and her sister taught me how to build labyrinths. And when she died, she wanted me to have these things. So I got this what I called shaman in a box, and I opened it up. It had a shamanic drum. It had a native flute. It had feathers, and smudge, and incense, and had all this. Uh, can I say a drum? I completely had a drum in there. But
Huh.
anyway, so I'm opening up all this stuff, and I go out onto the porch at my little cabin in the woods, and the frogs outside. There was I don't know what kind of frog it is, but it sounded like a rattle. It was like it was this rattle, and I just had this intuitive knowing that, wow, I just opened this shaman in a box thing, and I've got this frog out there. So for like a week and a half, this frog was haunting me with this. And then a friend of mine from Nashville hit me up by email, and she said, "I think you should do this workshop with me." And it was the workshop that we met. That was in Gatlinburg. But before that, I have a friend who is a shaman, and he travels the world and teaches shamanism. Also does soul retrieval and soul journeying. I made that last part up. He does soul retrieval, and anyway, he does some stuff with the shamanism. Anyway, so I went to him and we did a soul retrieval, and uh, at the end of it, we sat down and he kind of recapped, and he said, you know, Sean, at the end of the desert lies a sage, and that sage has like a string, and it's pulling you toward him, and it's a fishing line, and it's pulling you toward him, and that sage is you. But then you break the line and you get into this craziness of selling $45 million in real estate, and you never walk toward that. So John, you know, I'll never forget it. You know, when we were standing in that circle at that time, and we were both very new to the shaman way, and I'm thinking, here I am with a bunch of middle-aged folks with a drum and a rattle. Boy, do I feel foolish. And then the
Yeah.
spirit kind of took over, and suddenly I'm in the center, and I felt as if I was walking toward that sage. It really did. I really, that was that was the moment, it was a very powerful moment for me as I was walking intentionally toward that sage in the corner. And then all of a sudden behind me, I feel this wind behind me, and I feel this drum behind me, almost in encouragement as I walk toward this sage. And that was you.
It's
That was you
interesting.
behind me.
Yeah. And it's weird because before you got up and started dancing, I just had this knowing. I just had a knowing. It was like nothing that I did. I just knew that, like, see that guy over there? He's going to get up and dance, and you need to get behind him, and you need to like blow wind and like beat the drum. And just, and I didn't even, I mean, it was just so natural that I couldn't not do it. I just had to do it. You know, I just was like, well, I guess I'm doing this. And I feel like an idiot, right? I mean, I feel silly. We're in front of a bunch of strangers and we're beating drums, and, you know, and I'm just like, man, is this? And then, you know, we have this connection, we have this awesome moment. And that's, you know, that's the spirit, you know, that's the spirit. And you just can't, you can try to deny it. And I feel like I'm very rational minded, I can be a very materialist, reductionist, scientific minded person. And a lot of times I dissect myself and I look back and I'm like, wow, was this just a coincidence? Is this just, and I just get to a point where I'm like, I cannot deny the overwhelming nature of the spirit when it shows up, when these coincidences, these connections, you know, and you could try to write it all off, but it's almost like it's more work trying to rationalize it than it is just embracing the fact that we live in this massive mystery. That's a beautiful thing. And then you know, for, it's interesting because you did my spirit, you know, my spirit animal retrieval that we did our work together, and it was a butterfly. And at first I was, for mine anyway, it was like a butterfly. And at first I was really like, oh, weird. You know, I didn't know if I resonated with it. And then as I came back over the next week, I went back and I looked in all my journals since I was a kid, and I doodle butterflies, all the way going back to like middle school. Doodle butterflies, the past, you know, like just all these things with butterflies that are back in my past, you know. And then I would walk outside and I would be surrounded by like, you know, 5 or 6 butterflies, or like, you know, just things that seem uncanny. And it's like, this is really interesting. And it's that spirit, you know, that transformation. And it meant a lot, you know, just that connection that we made over the weekend meant a lot to me. And that kind of segues into what we're doing right now, which is, not only do I want to, you know,
Yeah.
I want to support you in your career as a healer. You know, that's what you're doing now. You're throwing your full-time, you know, ethos into being a healer, and I just want to support you in that. So really quick, what is your new website?
Yeah, thanks for saying that, John. And it was so beautifully said. I mean, really, that is what following spirit is all about. You jumping into that circle, I'll never let that go, and it just meant the world to me. And me jumping into the middle of that circle was me following my spirit. And you so beautifully said it. It's so, you can try to deny it, but it still shows up, and it shows up in the most uncanny, unique ways that are you. And you just listen, and if you're connected enough, you hear it and you just listen. And so in stepping into this work that I'm doing is really, as a healer, it sounds so, ooh, what does the guy think, you Jesus Christ? No. What the healing part is really in listening to you, to, it's really about listening to what's true for you and supporting that in the best way that I can, um, so that you can hear you, and that you can follow the whisper of your spirit and live in peace and authenticity and prosperity and connection in your life. And that's what my work is all about. So come, show up with Jesus, show up with Buddha, show up with Allah, show up with nothing, show up with nature, show up with
Hmm.
with your gut. Just show up and be willing. And I've got this beautiful painting in my office, and it's Hamlet cracking the door, and the in floods the light. And it's like, if you're willing to crack the door, then spirit, God, the universe, whatever it is for you, shows up in such big ways. The light just floods in. So you can learn more about me at mcguirelife.com. And the website's not even up yet. I'm doing final edits right now, but the website will be up next week.
And
I'm really excited about it.
how do you spell that? Can you spell that out?
MCGUIRELIFE.com.
Okay.
That's my last name, Sean McGuire, life.com. And I say that I'm a mentor and I'm a certified life coach, but mentor really means trusted advisor. I don't like sports too much, so I'm going to be a coach. But a mentor is my privilege.
Yeah, it's interesting because as you were saying that, talking about being a healer, something came up in my mind, and it was that, like, I feel the same way. I want to be a catalyst to help people, give people the tools to help them heal themselves. And one of those things is that it's a little bit selfish, because when you give people the tools and help mentor people to heal themselves, you're really healing yourself too. When you're healing the world, you're healing yourself, because we're all part of it. And there's something there is self-interest there, but that self-interest is in the pure joy that you get out of seeing people integrate and become healthier and become, their true authentic selves. That there's
And I'm not
definite.
outcome based that much. This is really my life purpose, John.
Yeah.
This is my purpose. I learned in coaching school, I'm an ancient soul guiding other souls toward a place of authenticity and connection. So that's my purpose, and I'm just trying to live as fully into that. If your purpose is to work for Microsoft, I support you in that.
Yeah.
Whatever your purpose is. But so I get the fulfillment, the satisfaction for me is being aligned with my life purpose. The outcome, I'm not outcome based. The work is yours to do. You step up with willingness, and the work is yours to do, and the outcome is your reward, should you be willing to do the work.
That's good. That's good. So as far as the recorded, the episode part, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up, because I think that's a really good place to end it. I'm going to go ahead and I'll post your website in the show notes. And I can, hold off on posting it until it's up and ready. But this has been a really great conversation. I hope those of you who wind up listening enjoy it. Is there any parting wisdom that you want to share at all at the end of this interview for anyone who's listening?
Be kind.
Be kind. I like it.
Be kind to yourself. Be gentle with yourself. Be kind to others. Just know that we're all doing the best we can, and it's one love. And I know it sounds real hippie, but just be kind. That's it. Yeah.
I love it. I like it.
Brother, I love you, John. I'm so grateful that you've asked me to do this, and I look forward to building a relationship with you.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that's it for our show, and we'll stay on and chat a little bit afterwards, but I'll go ahead and stop there. And my cliche ending for my podcast is peace and good tidings.